Around this time, I came up with the ambitious and tough idea of becoming morally perfect. I wanted to live without ever making a mistake. I aimed to overcome anything that my natural urges, habits, or friends might push me into. Since I knew, or thought I knew, what was right and wrong, I didn't see why I couldn't always do the right thing and avoid the wrong. But I quickly realized this was much harder than I thought. While I was busy trying to avoid one mistake, another would often catch me off guard. Bad habits would sneak in when I wasn't paying attention. Sometimes my desires were just too strong for my common sense. Eventually, I figured out that just believing it was good for us to be completely virtuous wasn't enough to stop us from messing up. Instead, we had to break bad habits and build good ones that stuck before we could truly count on always acting correctly. So for this goal, I came up with the following plan.
As I read about different moral virtues, I noticed that lists of them varied a lot. Some writers included many ideas under one virtue, while others had fewer. For instance, some people define temperance as just controlling eating and drinking, but others expanded it to mean moderating all pleasures, desires, urges, or strong feelings, whether physical or mental, even greed and ambition. To make things clearer for myself, I decided to use more virtue names, each with fewer specific ideas attached, rather than a few names with many ideas. So I came up with 13 virtues that seemed important or good to me at the time, and for each one I added a short rule that clearly explained what I meant by it. These virtues and their rules were: 1. Temperance. Don't eat so much you feel sluggish. Don't drink so much you get drunk. 2. Silence. Only speak if it helps others or yourself. Avoid pointless chatter. 3. Order. Keep everything in its place. Set aside specific times for each task. 4. Resolution. Decide to do what you should, then do it without fail. 5. Frugality. Only spend money if it benefits others or yourself. Don't waste anything. 6. Industry. Don't waste time. Always be doing something useful. Stop all unnecessary activities. 7. Sincerity. Don't lie or deceive in a harmful way. Think honestly and fairly, and speak the truth. 8. Justice. Don't harm anyone by doing wrong or by failing to do what you're supposed to do for them. 9. Moderation. Avoid going to extremes. Don't get angry about wrongs as much as you might feel they deserve. 10. Cleanliness. Don't put up with any dirtiness on your body, clothes, or in your home. 11. Tranquility. Don't get upset over small things or over common and unavoidable problems. 12. Chastity. Only engage in sexual activity for health or to have children, never to the point of feeling dull, weak, or harming your own or someone else's peace or reputation. 13. Humility. Try to be like Jesus and Socrates.
My intention being to acquire all these virtues, I decided it would be best not to try to do everything at once, but to focus on one virtue at a time. Once I had that one down, I'd move on to the next, and so on, until I'd gone through all 13. I also arranged them in the order you see above, thinking that mastering some would make it easier to learn others. Temperance came first because it helps you stay calm and think clearly, which is crucial when you need to be constantly alert and fight off old habits and endless temptations. Once this was acquired and established, silence would be easier. And since I wanted to gain knowledge while improving my virtues, and considering that in conversation you learn more by listening than by talking, and therefore wanting to break my habit of chattering, making puns and joking, which only made me popular with shallow people, I put silence second. This and the next, I expected, would give me more time for my project and studies. Resolution, once it became a habit, would keep me firm in my efforts to get all the other virtues. And industry, by getting me out of debt and making me financially secure and independent, would make practicing sincerity and justice, and so on, much easier. Following Pythagoras' advice in his golden verses, I then realized that daily self-examination would be necessary, so I came up with this method for doing it.
I created a small book, dedicating a page to each virtue. I drew lines on each page with red ink to make 7 columns, one for each day of the week, labeling each column with the day's initial. I then drew 13 red horizontal lines across these columns. At the start of each line, I wrote the first letter of one of the virtues. On that line, in the correct day's column, I would put a small black dot for every mistake I noticed I made regarding that virtue on that day. I decided to focus strictly on one virtue each week. So in the first week, my main goal was to avoid even the smallest offense against temperance, leaving the other virtues to their ordinary chance, only marking any mistakes I made each evening. Thus, if in the first week I could keep my first line, marked T, clear of spots, I supposed the habit of that virtue so much strengthened and its opposite weakened that I might venture extending my attention to include the next, and for the following week keep both lines clear of spots. By continuing this way, I could complete a full cycle in 13 weeks and 4 cycles in a year. It was like someone weeding a garden. They don't try to pull out all the weeds at once, which would be too much work, but instead focus on one section at a time. Once they finish the first, they move to the next. I hoped to have the satisfying experience of seeing my progress in virtue by gradually clearing my lines of spots until eventually, after many cycles, I'd be happy to see a clean book after 13 weeks of daily self-examination. My little book had these mottos. From Addison's work, "Here I will stand firm. If there's a higher power, and all of nature loudly confirms there is through everything it creates, he must love virtue, and whatever he loves must bring happiness." Another from Cicero, "O philosophy, guide of life, O seeker of virtues and destroyer of vices, one day lived well and according to your teachings is worth an eternity of sin." And another from the Proverbs of Solomon, talking about wisdom or virtue. "Long life is in her right hand, and in her left hand are wealth and honor. Her paths are pleasant, and all her ways lead to peace." Believing God was the source of all wisdom, I felt it was right and necessary to ask for His help to get it. For this, I wrote the following short prayer, which I put at the beginning of my examination charts for daily use. I also sometimes used a short prayer from Thompson's poems. "Father of light and life, you ultimate good, oh, teach me what is good. Teach me about yourself. Save me from foolishness, arrogance, and bad habits, from every petty goal, and fill my soul with knowledge, inner peace, and pure virtue, a holy, real, never-ending joy." To help with these, one page in my little book had this schedule for my day: morning, noon, evening, night.
I started this self-examination plan and kept it up, with some breaks, for a while. I was surprised to find I had many more faults than I'd imagined, but I was happy to see them decrease. To avoid the hassle of constantly replacing my little book, which got full of holes from scraping out old fault marks to make room for new ones in a fresh cycle, I moved my charts and rules to ivory pages in a notebook. The lines were drawn with red ink that wouldn't fade, and I marked my faults with a lead pencil, which I could easily erase with a wet sponge. After some time, I only did one cycle a year, and later just one every few years, until I eventually stopped completely because I was busy with travels and business abroad, and many other things got in the way. But I always kept my little book with me. My plan for order gave me the most trouble. I realized that while it might work for someone whose job allowed them to control their time, like a journeyman printer, it wasn't really possible for a master printer who had to deal with the public and often meet clients at their convenience. Order, too, with regard to places for things, papers, and so on, I found extremely difficult to acquire. I hadn't learned it early in life, and since I had a really good memory, I didn't feel the negative effects of being disorganized as much. So this particular virtue required a lot of painful effort, and my failures in it frustrated me so much, and I made so little progress with so many relapses that I almost gave up. I was ready to just accept being flawed in that area, like the man who bought an axe from my neighbor, the smith, and wanted the whole surface to be as shiny as the blade. The smith agreed to polish it if the man would turn the grinding wheel. The man turned, while the smith pressed the broad side of the axe hard against the stone, which made turning the wheel very tiring. The man kept checking on the work and eventually decided to take his axe as it was, without further grinding. "No," said the smith, "keep turning. We'll get it shiny soon. Right now it's still spotty." "Yes," the man replied, "I like a speckled axe." And I believe this might be true for many people who, lacking a system like mine, found it hard to develop good habits and break bad ones in other areas of right and wrong, and so they gave up, concluding that a speckled axe is best. For something that pretended to be reason would occasionally suggest to me that such extreme strictness I demanded of myself might be a kind of moral show-off, which, if known, would make me look ridiculous, that a perfect character might lead to being envied and hated, and that a kind person should have a few flaws to make their friends feel more comfortable.
Honestly, I found I just couldn't fix my issue with order. Now that I'm old and my memory is bad, I really feel the lack of it. But overall, even though I never reached the perfection I so eagerly sought and fell far short, trying to achieve it made me a better and happier person than I would have been if I hadn't tried. It's like people who try to write perfectly by copying engraved letters. Even if they never achieve that exact perfection, their handwriting improves from the effort and remains decent as long as it's neat and readable. It's good for my descendants to know that, with God's help, their ancestor owed the consistent happiness of his life, right up to his 79th year when this was written, to this little system. Whatever challenges the future holds are in God's hands, but if they come, remembering past happiness should help him face them with more acceptance. He credits temperance for his long-lasting health and the good constitution he still has. He credits industry and frugality for his early financial comfort and wealth, along with all the knowledge that allowed him to be a valuable citizen and earn some respect among educated people. He credits sincerity and justice for his country's trust and the honorable positions it gave him. And to the combined effect of all these virtues, even though he only managed to acquire them imperfectly, he attributes his calm demeanor and cheerful conversation, which still makes his company desirable and pleasant even to his younger friends. So I hope some of my descendants will follow this example and benefit from it.
You might notice that while my plan wasn't completely without religion, it didn't include any specific beliefs of any particular religious group. I deliberately avoided them because I was convinced my method was useful and excellent, and that it could help people of all faiths. Since I intended to publish it someday, I didn't want anything in it that would make anyone, from any religion, prejudiced against it.
I planned to write a short commentary on each virtue, explaining the benefits of having it and the problems caused by its opposite vice. I would have called my book The Art of Virtue because it would have shown how to achieve virtue, setting it apart from just telling people to be good without explaining how. That's like the Apostles' example of someone offering only verbal charity, who tells the naked and hungry to be fed and clothed without showing them how or where to get food or clothes. However, I never got around to writing and publishing this commentary. I did occasionally jot down notes and ideas for it, some of which I still have. But the constant demands of my private business early in life and public business later forced me to keep putting it off, because in my mind it was connected with that required my full attention to carry out and which an unforeseen succession of jobs prevented my attending to. It has hitherto remained unfinished. In this work, I intended to explain and emphasize the idea that bad actions aren't harmful because they're forbidden, but forbidden because they are harmful, considering human nature alone. Therefore, it was in everyone's best interest to be virtuous if they wanted to be happy, even in this life. And given that there are always many wealthy merchants, nobles, leaders, and rulers in the world who need honest people to manage their affairs, and such people are rare, I would have tried to convince young people that no qualities were more likely to help a poor person succeed than honesty and integrity.
My list of virtues originally had only 12, but a Quaker friend kindly told me that people generally thought I was proud, that my pride often showed up in conversations, that I wasn't content with just being right when discussing something, but was overbearing and rather rude. He convinced me of this by giving several examples. So I decided to try and cure myself of this flaw or foolishness, and I added humility to my list, giving the word a broad meaning. I can't claim much success in truly becoming humble, but I did get pretty good at the outward appearance of it. I made it a rule to avoid directly contradicting others' opinions and making any strong claims of my own. I even stopped myself, following the old rules of our Junto Club, from using any word or phrase that suggested a fixed opinion. Instead, I adopted phrases like, or it appears to me, or I imagine a thing to be so, or it seems to me. When someone said something I thought was wrong, I resisted the urge to immediately contradict them or point out the flaw in their argument. When I responded, I'd start by saying that in some situations their opinion might be correct, but in the current case there appeared to me some difference, and so on. I quickly saw the benefit of this change in my approach. My conversations became much more pleasant. The modest way I presented my opinions made people more open to them and less likely to argue. I felt less embarrassed when I was proven wrong, and I found it easier to convince others to change their minds and agree with me when I was right. This way of speaking, which at first felt unnatural and forced, eventually became so easy and habitual that for the past 50 years, no one has probably ever heard me make a dogmatic statement. And I believe this habit, along with my reputation for integrity, is the main reason I had so much influence with my fellow citizens early on when I proposed new ideas or changes to old ones, and so much sway in public councils once I became a member. Because I was a poor speaker, never eloquent, often hesitated when choosing words, and was hardly grammatically perfect, yet I usually got my points across. In reality, perhaps no natural human emotion is as hard to conquer as pride. You can hide it, fight it, beat it down, suppress it, humble yourself as much as you want, but it's still alive and will occasionally pop out and show itself. You'll probably see it often in this story, because even if I could believe I had completely overcome it, I'd probably be proud of my humility. Thus far written at Passy, 1784.
The project I had conceived,
it seems proper that some account should be here given of that project and its object. The idea first came to me, as shown in this small, accidentally preserved note, while I was reading history in the library on May 19, 1731, that the world's big events, like wars and revolutions, are driven and achieved by groups, that these groups are motivated by their current shared interests or what they believe those interests to be, that the different goals of these different groups cause all the confusion, that while a group is working on a common goal, each person in it also has their own private interests, that as soon as a group achieves its main goal, each member then focuses on their personal interests, which, by clashing with others, breaks the group into smaller factions and causes more confusion. That few people in public life truly act solely for the good of their country, no matter what they claim. And even if their actions do benefit their country, people primarily thought that their own and their country's interest was united and did not act from a principle of kindness. That even fewer people in public life act with the good of all humanity in mind. It seems to me now that there's a great need to create a united party for virtue by bringing together virtuous and good people from all nations into an organized body to be governed by appropriate good and wise rules, which good and wise people would likely follow more consistently than ordinary people follow common laws. I currently believe that anyone who attempts this correctly and is well qualified cannot fail to please God and succeed. B.F.
As I thought about this project, planning to undertake it later when I had enough free time, I occasionally jotted down ideas about it on scraps of paper. Most of these are lost, but I found one that seems to be the core of a planned belief system. It contained, I thought, the essential ideas of every known religion and avoided anything that might offend followers of any faith. It was expressed like this: that there is one God who created everything, that he guides the world through his divine plan, that he should be worshipped with adoration, prayer, and gratitude, but that the best way to serve God is by doing good for others, that the soul lives forever, and that God will definitely reward good deeds and punish bad ones, either in this life or the next. My ideas at that time were that the group should start and spread at first among young single men only, that each new member would not only agree to this creed, but would also have completed the 13-week examination and practice of virtues, as described earlier, that the existence of such a society should be kept a secret until it grew large enough to prevent unsuitable people from trying to join, but that the members should each of them look among their acquaintances for clever, well-meaning young people to whom, with prudent caution, the plan should be gradually revealed, that the members should promise to offer each other advice, help, and support in advancing one another's interests, businesses, and lives, that to distinguish ourselves, we should be called the free and easy, free as in by generally practicing virtues, free from the control of vice, and particularly by being industrious and frugal, free from debt, which can lead to imprisonment and a kind of slavery to creditors. This is as much as I can remember about the project now, except that I shared parts of it with two young men who enthusiastically adopted it. But my limited financial situation at the time and the need to focus on my business forced me to postpone working on it further. My many public and private responsibilities led me to keep delaying it, so it has been put off until I no longer have the strength or energy for such a big undertaking. Still, I believe it was a workable plan, and could have been very useful by creating many good citizens. I wasn't discouraged by how big the task seemed, as I've always thought that one person with decent abilities can bring about great changes and achieve great things among people if they first create a good plan, cut out all distractions or other activities, and make executing that plan their sole focus and business.